So after you have selected your photo and you've cropped it, feel free to print it. You can also change it to black and white because eventually, since many of you will be shading with graphite, it might make sense to do that. I might finish this one off with color, so I've printed it in color pencil. I printed mine so that basically it's life size. You can also measure off of your own face if you're doing a self-portrait. It's a little bit more challenging if you're doing a picture of someone else who's in your family. So try to print it as close to life size as possible. And so what I want to do is go ahead and start drawing things out, focusing on the proportions of the face. If you notice that if I look at where my nose lines up with my eye, right, just like we practiced, it pretty much lines up with the inner corner of my eye. Right? And then my mouth, if I'm going to draw it, with my expression, it's not quite the center, right? It's slightly in the center. So those are things that you want to pay really close attention to. What I'm going to go ahead and do to get started is I'm going to take some measurements. And so I'm going to measure from corner to corner on my picture for my eyes. And I'm going to notice that it is about 1 1/4 across. So on my paper, I'm going to go ahead and find 1 1/4. And I'm trying to kind of center it in my page so I have plenty of space to rip it out later. Right, so I start at the 0 and then about the 1 1/4. That's the gap in between. And so theoretically, my eye should be another 1 1/4. The other eye should be 1 1/4. Right? But it's always good to double check. So if I look here from corner to corner, all the way to the edge of my eyelid is 1 1/4. But notice how the white of my eye is a little smaller. A lot of times people think that when they're looking at the measurements, it's truly just for the whites of the eye. But remember that this measurement includes also the thickness of your eyelid. So pay really close attention to that. When you're working on proportion, another thing you can do is to figure out where the base of your nose is going to be. Since I'm not doing my whole face, I might want to look at, well, from the corner of my eye, my nose is slightly under 2 inches. And I could even make a mark on my ruler for that if I wanted to. And then I could go down here and look at where the base of my nose is going to be. So you would want to do this really, really lightly. For me, I did it a little bit darker just so that you could see it on the video, okay? So once I get these measurements in for my features, then I can go ahead and start working on the shapes. So I want to lightly draw in the shape of my eye, right? Noticing how it's not symmetrical, right? And noticing how the bottom and the top eyelid are entirely different. The bottom of mine is a little bit flatter, okay? And so just because I drew it once doesn't mean it's perfect, so I'll probably come back and revisit this again. Right? I could even, if it helped me, I could even measure how tall my eye is going to be. So it's about 1/2 inch. This one is a little under, because I know from years of drawing myself that my eyes are not symmetrical. One eye is bigger than the other, right? So I can take some time. And when I go to put in the iris, it's really important that you look at how much space the iris takes up for the white of the eye. Okay? So I want to really draw on the shape I see. Notice how I can't see the entire circle. And then I want to place the pupil. And so I want to, make sure I'm really paying attention to that. And then for my nose, I could measure the height of the wings of my nose, right? This is kind of this edge here, the tip. I want to look for where the alignment is. Notice how the wings of my nose don't align with the tip of my nose. For everyone, that's a little bit different. So a lot of times what people do is they kind of measure these individual parts to really help them make it look like them. So I'm going to kind of roughly draw it out, just using my sight for proportions. And then I might go back in to double check to make sure I'm drawing it the right way. So first, just start with detail. I probably have to go in here and add a little bit more. I'm going to need to refine these shapes, right? I'm going to want to make sure that the white of my eye is kind of pointed here, and that I have then the thickness of my eye, so my eyelid here. Don't worry about putting in eyelashes yet. I have the pink part, the thickness of my bottom eyelid here. I have this little crease. So you're going to really refine this and take time to add all those little details. We don't want to rush this process. So I know some of you aren't even doing eyes, but the same thing would follow for lips and so on. You really want to focus on what you see, not what you think you see, or kind of those symbols that we talked about early in the semester. We don't want to oversimplify. We want to draw exactly what we see, right? So here I'm actually adding in that thickness of my eyelid. And if I draw too dark, you can always use a kneaded eraser to lighten things up before you begin to shade, okay? Let's pretend that I'm completely done and satisfied. Once I am done with that, I'm going to go ahead and erase all of those guidelines before I start to shade. Okay, I'm not completely finished. I need to keep going here. Like I'm going to need to add my laugh line here. I'm going to have to add the crease of my eyelid. I'm going to probably have to indicate where my eyebrow is going to be. I'm even going to have to put in some of these wrinkles on my forehead. But take your time and do a good job to really ensure that it looks like you or your subject matter.